For as long as the NFL has existed, it has tried to answer one question. Who matters the most? Every year, the league hands out an award called the Most Valuable Player, better known as the MVP. It sounds definitive. It sounds important. It sounds like something we should all agree on. But the longer you look at it, the harder it is to explain what the award actually measures. Because if the NFL MVP is about value, then value is something that we have never agreed upon. Nowhere is that more obvious than in who almost never wins it. The official definition of the MVP is the AP NFL Most Valuable Player is an annual award presented by the Associated Press to a player of the National Football League adjudged to have been the most valuable player in that year's regular season. That's the entire definition. There's no formula, there's no explanation, there's no shared understanding of value, which means that the award becomes whatever the voters decide it is. And over time, they've decided on something very specific. So we must ask, what is value? Since the year 2000, the NFL MVP has overwhelmingly gone to quarterbacks, with there only being 4 seasons since then where a non-quarterback has won the award. It's not because quarterbacks are always the best players, but it's because quarterbacks are the easiest players to credit for winning. They touch the ball every play. They control the scoreboard. They simplify the story. When a team goes 15-2, we say that the quarterback led them there. When a team struggles to win not even 3 games, we say that the quarterback has failed. The value has become synonymous with the record, and that shortcut has defined the award. But value is not the same thing as responsibility. Quarterbacks benefit more from strong teams than any other position in football. They rely on protection, play calling, defensive stops, field positioning. A quarterback can be lifted by his receiving corps, by his running backs. When everything works, their value looks enormous. When everything around them breaks, their value disappears. And that is the flaw that the MVP award never solves. It creates a strange reality. A player can define an entire season. They can reshape how defenses are played. They can be the single most irreplaceable piece on the field. And still, they can start the MVP race behind. And it's not because of performance. It's because of position. So to understand what the award has become, you do not start with the quarterback. You start with the season. A season that should be impossible in modern football. A season that makes you ask a basic question. If this is not valuable, then what is? In 2024, Saquon Barkley rushed for over 2,000 yards. Only a handful of players in the history of the NFL have ever done that. And Barkley did it, in an era that was designed to stop it, an era made for passing the ball. And this was not volume without efficiency. Barkley averaged over 5 yards per carry. He produced explosive runs at a top-tier rate, and he did it against defenses built to erase the run game. Defenses built to shut down Philadelphia's attack. If you want the quick version, it is this. 2,000 yards is rare. 2,000 yards with elite efficiency is rarer. A 2,000-yard season like this used to win you the MVP by default. But as of recently, including Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, that's not the case anymore. But the modern MVP has a filter, and the filter is the quarterback. This season came after Barkley left New York, and he joined Philadelphia, a team with playoff expectations, a team with a quarterback, who some may deem elite, and a team that commanded defensive attention. But when you look closer, the Eagles' offense revolved around one thing. When Saquon Barkley ran well, the Eagles controlled games. When he didn't, everything tightened. On early downs, Barkley ranked near the top of the league in rushing success rate. That matters because success rate is not about highlights. It measures whether a play keeps the offense on schedule. 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, situations where the playbook can stay open. Barkley didn't just gain yards, he stabilized the offense. And defenses knew this. Barkley consistently faced stacked boxes. Safeties crept down. The linebackers triggered early. And still, his yards after contact remained elite. And that tells you something important. These are not untouched runs. These are contested runs. value that existed after the play broke down. And this is where the argument gets simple. If a quarterback has a great season, we assume it is value. If a running back has a great season, we ask, what did the offensive line do? So let's be fair. Let's treat Barkley like an MVP candidate. In Eagles wins, Barkley routinely cleared the kind of yardage that changes how the second half is played. The defenses got tired. The secondary started biting on running plays, which made play action more believable, and it also made third downs more manageable. And in games where Barkley's output dropped, the offense narrowed. And it wasn't because Barkley failed. It was because without him, creating a margin, everything else had to be perfect. Now let's ask the question that the writers are often too scared to ask. What happens if we take this player away from their team? Will the team still reach the heights that it reached in the regular season? The offense does not just lose production, it loses identity. It loses the easiest path to early down success. It loses its explosive play engine. It loses the part of the offense that does not require ideal conditions. Now let's ask the same question about the quarterback. If you replace the top quarterback with an average starter, the team changes, of course, but the structure survives. The difference is value. Barkley ranked among league leaders in non-quarterback offensive value. His explosive runs swung games in a way that short passing efficiency often does not. But those moments are harder to summarize. It doesn't fit neatly into a box score. They require you to understand why a 7-yard run on first down can be more valuable than a 12-yard completion on 3rd and 10. And most voters are not voting on that. They are voting on the story. Despite a 2,000-yard season, despite efficiency, despite defensive attention, despite carrying offensive identity, Saquon Barkley was never treated as the MVP favorite. It wasn't because he wasn't valuable, and it's because value in the MVP race still has a positional requirement, and that position is quarterback. A season like this used to define eras. If you want to understand how deep this goes, you do not look for another running back. You look for a player who did not just succeed, but you look for a player who bent coverage rules until defenses had no good options left. And then you look at what the award did with it. In 2012, Calvin Johnson caught passes in a way that made defense feel optional. He finished the season with 1,964 receiving yards. That is still the most in NFL history. But the number alone does not explain the season. The 2012 Detroit Lions did not have balance. They did not have a reliable run game. They did not have a consistent secondary target. They did not have protection that held up. But what they had was Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson accounted for an extreme share of Detroit's receiving production. This was not a star within an offense. This was an offense routing itself through one player by necessity. When the Lions needed a conversion, Stafford looked to Johnson. When they needed a deep shot, Stafford looked to Johnson. When a play broke down, Stafford looked to Johnson. Defenses responded accordingly. Calvin Johnson faced constant attention. Corners played with leverage, safeties shaded to his side, linebackers squeezed windows. He was double covered. And on critical downs, he saw the kind of coverage that is designed to remove a player from the game entirely. And still, he produced at an elite rate. Johnson led the league in yards per route run. He ranked near the top in contested catch performance, and those are not volume stats. Those are difficulty stats. They describe the quality of production relative to what the defense is doing. Calvin Johnson was not open because Detroit created confusion. He was productive because he was unavoidable. Detroit finished with 4 wins and 12 losses, and that record became the summary. But it hides the important detail. The Lions lost a large number of their games by 1 score. They were in games late because Johnson gave them a way to keep converting impossible situations. He created offense when offense did not exist, and the MVP conversation treated that as empty because the award does not like value that exists inside losing systems. Now, do the replaceability test again. Remove Calvin Johnson from that roster. What is Detroit that year? They lose their conversion engine. They lose their explosive play engine. They lose the player that defenses were losing sleep about. The roster not only degrades, if Calvin Johnson is not there, it collapses. Detroit does not win 4 games that year without Calvin Johnson. That is value. It looks like a game plan that cannot function without one person, and the MVP award does not know what to do with that, so it does the simplest thing. It looks away. So when a running back produces an impossible season, the award tells him the position is wrong. When a wide receiver produces an impossible season, the award tells him that the team's record is wrong. Eventually, you start to notice a pattern. The MVP is not a measurement of value. It is a reward for a specific kind of season on a successful team. Adrian Peterson won the MVP in 2012. Peterson rushed for 2,097 yards, 8 months removed. The recovery itself became part of the season's meaning, because it gave the year a narrative arc. And the MVP voters love narrative arcs. But Peterson was not only a story, he was the offense. The Vikings passed for under 3,000 yards as a team. They were not balanced. They were dependent. Every defense knew what Minnesota wanted to do, and they still could not stop it. The quarterback field that year was fragmented. There was no runaway candidate for who was the best quarterback. No obvious statistical leader. That made the vote difficult. That allowed a window for a non-quarterback to win. Peterson didn't just have a great season. He arrived at the perfect moment in the voting landscape. He had historical production, historical story, clear dependency, and there's no runaway quarterback. Non-quarterbacks do not win MVP by being valuable. They win by removing doubt. Peterson did not change how MVP voting works. He survived it by producing a season that was so overwhelming that ignoring it would have felt dishonest. These seasons are just inconvenient. They ask the voters to separate value from wins, impact from narrative, and dominance from position. The MVP award does not fail because it favors quarterbacks. It fails because it never asks what value looks like. Because the truth is, the MVP award is not trying to measure value. It's trying to summarize a season. It selects a face, a name, a story that we can tell 20 years down the line. And quarterbacks make that easy. They are visible. They are central. They are the face of the league. There's a story we can tell. But football is not only the scoreboard. The value is not always the player who throws the last pass, the player who throws the furthest pass. Sometimes the value is the player who makes the game manageable for the rest of his team. Sometimes the value is the reason a team is even in the conversation to win a game. And if the award cannot recognize that, then the award is not a value award. It is something else. With Saquon Barkley doing something historic and still starting behind. With Calvin Johnson bending defenses to his will and being treated like it was just empty yards. And with Adrian Peterson winning only after meeting the impossible standard. The MVP award is not a measurement of value. It is a measurement of what we decide to celebrate. And that is why it can feel pointless. Not because the winners are undeserving, but because the name of the trophy promises something that the process cannot deliver.